think I'll go ahead and just start talking. I think, yes, we are ready. We are ready. Good afternoon. Can I have your attention? There you go. I think my job this weekend, it has been a lot of fun, but every time I have to break up everybody having such a good time, and I hate that part. But it has been such a fun weekend so far, and it's going to continue being fun, I'm sure. Thank you all for being here today. We have a full Richards room. This is wonderful with this wonderful panel who is here. If I haven't had a chance to meet you yet, my name is Jess Hill, and I'm honored to serve as the 7th head of school at Harpeth Hall. I think I've been doing this for about 150 days, and I think it's been raining for about 100 of those days. But that's okay. It does not dampen our spirits, and we are so glad you're here, and we hope you will linger afterwards as well for our party afterwards. It is my honor to introduce to you Ann Wyatt Little. I first knew Ann Wyatt when she was a freshman, I think in geometry. Is that right, Ann Wyatt? I remember talking to her outside of room 7 on the Massey Hall, and I should have known then, I probably did know then, that her determination and her spirit was going to carry her far. We didn't know these words like growth mindset back then, but she certainly had one. I know that. I know she had a growth mindset and not a fixed mindset, and we are so grateful for that. Ann Wyatt Little, class of 2004, is celebrating her 15th reunion this year. While at Harpeth Hall, she was active in the debate club and mock trial, earning Best Defense Lawyer her senior year. She went on to receive a BA in journalism and political science from Southern Methodist University and was named the Outstanding Graduate in the Journalism College. Following college, Ann Wyatt produced and anchored the weekend shows for the NBC affiliate in Lubbock, Texas, before joining Austin, Texas's Fox 7 news team. Working primarily for Good Day Austin, in 2017 she moved to Charlotte, North Carolina, where she is a news anchor for Fox 46 in the evenings at 5 p.m. and at 6:30 p.m. It is our honor to welcome Ann Wyatt to the podium.
And a big thank you to Jess for your patience during that geometry class with me. I really do appreciate it. What an honor to be here. I think the last time I had a microphone at Harpeth Hall was for a senior speech, so I'm proud to say that I've come a long way since then. Before I introduce our panelists, I just want to go over that I'll be asking you each a question, give you time to answer that before we move on to the next question. So our panelists for today, Mary Morrissey Alexander, the class of 1969. And a special shout out to all the ladies celebrating their 50th. They're up front and center. You have a fan group here today. Mary is the director of the Grants Development and Management for Metropolitan Nashville Public Schools right here in Nashville. Allison Smith, class of 1979, is the executive... Another fan group in the back there. Is the executive vice president for distribution, publisher relations, and administration services at BMI in New York. Carrington Nelson Fox, class of 1989, is a writer, journalist here in Nashville. Elizabeth Ann Stringer, class of 1999, is the chief science and clinical officer at Axial Healthcare right here in Nashville. And then we have Phoebe Carver Lane, class of 2009. The director of program design at One Acre Fund in Kenya and just moved back to the States, so welcome. All right, Mary, I'm going to start with you with our first question, not to put you in the hot seat. So thinking back to when you graduated from Harpeth Hall, what did you envision for your future and how did that vision play out?
lifelong interest in learning and teaching, schools, all things education, began in 1965 when I entered Harpeth Hall as a freshman. In fact, in the opening, in the opening assembly right next door where Wallace Wing is today, I was inspired and supported by excellent faculty and wanted to follow in their footsteps. I wanted to be a teacher. So this desire and interest led me to Vanderbilt for my undergraduate and graduate studies and back to Harpeth Hall in 1979, where I had the privilege and the honor to teach history to 7th grade girls, over 2,000, several are here today, over 2,000 girls. I had the privilege to teach them in this school, this wonderful school with its student-centered learning environment, dedicated teachers, supportive leadership. I just loved it. It was wonderful. At the age of 50, my vision shifted. During some changes in my personal life, I entered a doctoral program at Vanderbilt in education, leadership, and policy, and had a lot of opportunities to work in those fields. As a graduate student, I became involved in research, policy, and education reform through papers, presentations, teaching, research, and became aware of critical education issues facing our country. I had the opportunity to pursue that interest when I was asked to do some consulting work, and then I embarked on federal, state, and local education reform work, leaving Harpeth Hall in 2009. So my vision changed. A particularly challenging learning experience when I was at Vanderbilt as a longtime history teacher, older history teacher, was completing my dissertation, which used complex statistical analysis on a national longitudinal data set. And I attribute that accomplishment to the can-do girl school attitude that made me, and I think my professors just stuck with me because they saw my perseverance. Today I work in Metro Nashville Public School District. It's a large urban district with 86,000 students. 70% are economically disadvantaged. 30% are from non-English language backgrounds, representing 120 different languages in the district. And the district faces many challenges. My team develops, acquires, manages, and evaluates grant resources to help the challenges of the school district. We work on grants to improve student learning, to strengthen our schools, to overcome disparities in student outcomes, and to increase teacher and leader effectiveness. I was just going to mention a couple of those if I still have time. Okay. One is the pre-K, this large federal pre-K grant, $30 million, which not only increases access to low-income students in pre-K, but tries to make every student ready for kindergarten when they enter kindergarten. Another one is the Gear Up grant, which is, the Gear Up grant is focused on increasing the number of low-income first generation to go to college students enrolling and successfully completing their post-secondary. This is really exciting to me. Yesterday, a colleague sent me a picture of these 100 students at Stratford celebrating college signing day, and they all had been part of the Gear Up. The Gear Up starts when they're in middle school and provides support to the parents and the students all the way through their first year in post-secondary, helping to change the attitude towards pursuing post-secondary and having the skills to do that. Another one I wanted to mention was the Magnet School Grant. It targets 5 high-need elementary schools, transforming them to these STEAM magnet schools that are aimed to reduce minority group isolation. 3 of the schools, the target group is they're African American, and 2 is Hispanic, and they're trying to attract other students to the school to reduce the minority group isolation and to increase student outcomes. And one more I wanted to mention is the
Mary, I may have to just scoot along.
Loving this.
Not to cut you
I
off at
didn't know
all.
if I would get to the grants, I'm sorry. But
Which are so important.
My vision is still in education, but it started out teaching and then it went into more policy and reform work.
And all of the students here in Nashville are lucky that that vision has played out the way that it has. And it's my job today to kind of keep us on time,
Yes,
so
yes.
don't think I'm cutting
no.
anyone off. That's what the cocktail reception is for after this. So, Allison, now to you. When you graduated from Harpeth Hall, same question. What did you envision your future like then, and how did that play out to where we are now?
Well, how do I follow Mary?
Right?
Tremendous. Congratulations. I don't know if I really had a vision, to be perfectly honest with you. Sorry, Mom. My mom's in the back up there. I probably should have said I did have a vision, but I didn't really. I was a ball player. I wanted to go play ball and have fun in college. I don't know, as I thought really beyond that, and what was kind of the eye-opener for me was when the volleyball program got cut at Auburn, my second year, and I went, oh, what do I do now? And I came back to Nashville, and I worked at a frame shop, the Beveled Edge, and y'all may know Janet Summers, she worked there as well, and so I thought about what I wanted to do, but I also didn't have the funds to go back to school. And I really wanted to, and enter Harpeth Hall again. My dear friend and guidance counselor, Janet Hensley, came to me, Janet, and said, you know, Allison, why aren't you back in school? And I said, well, I don't have the funds to get back to school, Janet. I'm trying to make some money. And in 20 minutes, she came back to me and said, I have somebody who's going to be your angel. And she said, I have a friend who wants to pay it forward, and she wants to pay your way to school. I didn't know who it was, and she said, if you will pick a school, if you will maintain a B or better average, she will pay your way as long as you pay it forward. So, my vision was formed by, I did Terry even think about it, but my vision was sort of formed by my angel. And so I went to Belmont, and I was in the, yay, a Belmont person back there. I went to Belmont and was in the first music business graduating class. I loved music. Excuse me, I couldn't play an instrument, couldn't sing in the shower, but I did. Just wanted to do something with music and business. I thought I was going to be a lawyer. So I graduate Belmont, I get out of school, and my mom at the time worked at BMI for a woman named Frances Preston, who y'all may know. Frances became one of my dearest friends and mentors, and called me one day when I was working at a restaurant after school and said, do you want to come for 6 weeks to work at BMI? We have a woman that is going on maternity leave. And I said, sure, why not? Let me try it out. Never thought I'd work there because Mom did. I went there, and that was 34 years ago. So I started at BMI, doing a little bit of everything. Our song registrations at the time were on index cards. One of my first jobs was to take that copyright information and input it into these brand new things called computers. So I did that. 2 years later, Frances said, "You want to come to New York? And by the way, your mom's going with you." So off Mom and I went to New York, and Mom stayed there about 8 or 9 years and came back. I did not, but I was lucky enough to rise through the ranks, if you will, at BMI and work in the royalty distribution areas, get to know my clients, who are some of the most amazing creators on the planet. I was given the opportunity to travel the world. I still travel every week, but I go back to my days at Harpeth Hall, and I had a love for music. Everybody in my class knows that. I used to go blaring down the road with my T-tops out and Billy Joel and Fleetwood Mac playing, and that love for music allowed me to really be involved in a career that has taken me beyond any of my wildest dreams. So that's kind of my backstory, starting with no vision, but now I'm in charge of having visions for my team and trying to come up with visions and not knowing what the hell the industry's going to do tomorrow. But that's where we are now.
Thank you, Allison Carrington. What about you? Your vision when you graduated here in that white dress, and then where you are now?
Well, I remember Ms. Schoaf, who is my English teacher, asked us at one point to write our vision or some vision for ourselves and put it on a little slip of paper on the door outside her classroom. And I vaguely remember that mine was that I wanted a small cabin in the woods where I would write and soak in the bathtub a lot. And that has played out. I mean, I bathe so frequently, but the little cabin in the woods part is sort of funny because I ended up, I just got a shed, which is thrilling. And it's in my backyard. It's 8 feet by 8 feet, and it is really tacky. It's so awful and ugly, and I just pressure washed it today. But the reason I mention it is because the shed kind of represents this whole change of my career. And so I graduated from Harpeth Hall. I went to college at Princeton. I studied art history, and then I traveled around for a bunch. And then I came back to Nashville, and I got a job at a Harpeth Hall graduate got me my first job at the Nashville Banner, where I went in the mornings at 5:30 in the morning, and I wrote headlines. And I love puns, and so headlines, I was great at headlines. And then one thing led to another, and somebody left the business desk, and they needed somebody on the business desk, and my dad was in business, so I was like, I could do that. And so I joined the business desk, and then like 3 weeks later, the Banner closed, and the Tennessean bought the Banner. So I moved over to the Tennessean, and I worked there, and I continued on the business desk there for a while. And then I realized that I really didn't know very much about business. I mean, I was a very strong writer, and I asked a lot of questions, and I knew a lot of people for growing up in Nashville and having been at Harpeth Hall. And I had access to such incredible people who were so generous. And my friends' mothers and fathers would spend hours on the phone explaining really complicated things to me at my news desk. And I was like, how do you spell that? Gosh, so it was great. But then I realized I really didn't know enough to thrive as a business reporter unless I got more education. So I went back to Vanderbilt, to the Owen School, and got an MBA. And then I had learned enough about business by that point to realize you can't go to graduate school and take out the student loans and then go back to journalism. So I did 1 year, and by a year I mean 365 of the most excruciating days of my life in investment banking. And then my journalism friends called and said, hey, we're working on a campaign, come join this campaign, and I worked with your sister, and it was so much fun. We had the best time. It was a great time. And then I worked for Governor Bredeson's campaign, and then I went into state government for a little while, and then that whole time I continued to write various columns for various publications. And then finally realized that really, truly my real love was writing. So I went back to journalism. I went back to the Nashville scene, and then became the restaurant columnist for a long time there. Is my time up? I'm just like...
You're good. You're good.
Okay. Okay. Two more minutes. So anyway, I wrote about restaurants for a very long time until, I mean, I loved that so much, but there comes I had used all the words, like... Any synonym for salty, I had used it. So I decided I was going to write a novel. So I sat down and I did actually, like, I wrote a novel, and that was really, really fun. I loved it, and I had a great time doing that for about a year. And then I pitched the novel, and I sent it off to New York and to agents, and the response I got was like, sure. Then I just decided did not ever want to write another word. I was so lonely. It was very lonely. I just sat quietly at my desk for days on end, like da-da-da. So one day, this is where the story takes a bizarre twist. I drove up to the Tennessee College of Applied Technology, where they teach construction, and I asked them if I could learn construction. And I said, can you just teach me anything? I'd like one skill, one distinct skill. I'd like to learn plumbing or electrical or just something that would make me more useful in the world. And they said, well, we don't really do that. We're a college, and you can come to our college and we'll teach you to build houses. And I was like, I had so much going on that I was like, okay, you know. So I joined this class. I joined a 2-year program with a bunch of 19-year-old boys, and I got a diploma in building construction technology. And then I have always been a writer. I love writing, so I was writing a blog about the program, and my blog was called Build Me Up Buttercup, because it was about building, but it was also about this whole experience. It was building me up again, which I really needed. So I wrote the blog, and the timing was such that the program that I was in was brand new, and they were so happy to have any exposure for it and anybody talking highly about the program. So the whole school, the Tennessee College of Applied Technology and the Tennessee Board of Regents and the Tennessee College System got kind of excited about the blog. And so here I was, like, this 46-year-old woman, and I was a grown-ass woman and a bunch of 19-year-old boys, and writing this blog. And so they nominated me for a very sweet honor, which was like the Student of the Year for my school, and it was so cute. That's great. But then that catapults you to the Student of the Year for the region, and so that catapults you to the Student of the Year for the state. And then the craziest thing is that last spring, I took my family to the Tennessee College's annual convention or whatever it is, and I was named the outstanding technical student of the year for the state. But the punchline of that, and I will stop talking, is, but you know what you get for being that is you win a car. So I won a car, and now I work for Ridley Wills at the Wills Company doing design, build, handyman work, construction work.
What a story there, Carrington. From one writer to another. Elizabeth Ann, what about you? When you graduated from Harpeth Hall, your vision, and how has that vision played out?
So graduating from Harpeth Hall, I thought that I wanted to go into engineering. I had done pretty well in math and science, and I had this vision of success that was very linear and modeled after my parents and their success, and it was pretty formulaic. Even though I thought I wanted to pursue engineering, I decided that I would go to a liberal arts school to have a nice broad education. I ended up majoring in physics and realizing that I absolutely loved physics and that engineering was not what I wanted to pursue. This made my parents very happy. They thought that that was fabulous, a daughter that was a physics major. And I was going to go on and pursue my PhD in physics at Georgia Tech. And at the last minute, I decided that my heart wasn't in it. I did not want to do that. And I had to have this conversation with my parents. My mom started crying, and it was really hard to sit there and disappoint my parents. But I knew that it was not something that I was ready for and really able to pursue with my whole heart. I took the year off. I had a lot of fun. I cooked for a year in Athens, Georgia. It was fabulous, but it made me realize I was really ready to get back to more academic pursuits, and realized maybe what I wanted was just to apply that physics background in a more applied setting to human health. So I went on and pursued my PhD in neuroimaging and neuroscience at Vanderbilt. It was a pretty tough road, and for anyone who comes from academia, again, it's a really linear path to success. You get your PhD, you go on to do your postdoc, there's all sorts of funding grants that you're supposed to pursue into getting your professorship. And I frankly hated academia. So, again, I was not going to follow that linear path of success that was modeled before me. And what I decided that I would do was I wasn't really ready to decide what I wanted to be when I grew up by the time I finished my PhD. So I went on to do a postdoc to give me more exposure. I did my postdoc out at Stanford, and I was thankfully exposed to so many alternatives to the academic life out in the Bay Area. So many people that were translating what they were studying in the academic setting and applying that to business. And I thought, you know, that sounds a little more up my alley. So I ended up finishing my postdoc after a couple years, moving back to Nashville, and just sort of hit the ground networking like crazy, talking to person after person who would introduce me to two more people, who would introduce me to two more people. And thankfully, one of my dearest friends, Sarah Lodge-Talley, Sarah's mother, also very close friend of mine, introduced me to somebody who was in venture capital, who introduced me to somebody else, who introduced me to somebody else. And I ended up meeting the co-founders of the startup that I'm working for now, Axial Healthcare. So I came in as employee number 3. And again, true to form, not following that linear path to success. I actually worked for 9 months with no pay, and realizing that to get that next opportunity, I was going to have to do some things that maybe set me back again from where all of my friends and former colleagues were. But thankfully, that's paid off to where I am now. I'm in the business setting. Never thought I would be in business, but I think I've really learned to follow my own voice and what it is that I'm enjoying at the time, and not be so critical about comparing myself to my peers and what everybody else is doing, or those paths that were modeled before me.
Thank you, Elizabeth Ann. That persistence pays off. Phoebe, now to you, thinking back when you graduated from Harpeth Hall 10 years ago, what did you envision for your future, and how did that vision play out?
Yeah, so I think sort of similar to Allison, graduating from high school, I'm not sure I had a clear vision for the future. I think that was pretty ambiguous at the time. I think I was pretty focused on shifting into my college experience and felt sort of the privilege of comfort of, okay, I'm going to get a great education and hopefully the world will be my oyster. But I do think that there were a few kind of guiding principles that I had in the back of my mind. One of which was wanting to have a career focused in social impact, although I'm not sure I quite had the language at that point to be able to articulate that. But kind of the cliche of wanting to help people and hoping that I could make that part of my career. And then the other kind of guiding principle was a desire to get out into the world and experience adventure and certainly other cultures. I definitely wanted to live abroad at some point. So those were sort of in the back of my mind. And I think in terms of what's actually transpired, I've spent the last almost 6 years living and working in rural Kenya. And the organization that I work for still provides smallholder farm families with input loans, so basically seed, fertilizer, other non-agricultural products on credit alongside training, and essentially helps people to become less hungry, have more food for their families, and have more income to pay for basic expenditures like healthcare and school fees and improving what are often quite challenging homes. So certainly the social impact part came true, and it was cool because when I thought about a vision, it was very difficult to actually put it into any concrete terms because I didn't really understand in this field what was possible, what the options were. And I certainly never saw myself working in agriculture in rural Africa. But that's sort of what's transpired, and I think it's very much in line with the kind of guiding principle of the social impact piece that I really cared about. And then the other part about adventure has obviously also come true. I think living where I've lived, of course, there are challenges that come with it, but for me, what's kept me there for this long and what's been so fabulous has been the opportunity to see things that I kind of went beyond my wildest dreams. So I think in terms of a few examples, a couple years ago I got to climb and sleep on the lip of an active volcano called Mount Nyiragongo in the Democratic Republic of Congo, and I didn't picture myself sort of sleeping on the edge of a lava lake in Africa. When my mom came to visit last year, 2 years ago I guess, we went trekking with the mountain gorillas in Rwanda. And I think getting the opportunities to see sort of the natural and very rugged beauty of where I was living has very much expanded, I think, what was a sort of narrow understanding of the continent in the context of poverty and potentially danger, and starting to see it as a much more kind of nuanced place. So yeah, I think my vision was blurry and it's not what I expected, but that's how it's played out.
Our next question. Mary, how did Harpeth Hall help to prepare you for life beyond the plaid? In what ways could Harpeth Hall have maybe helped more?
Well, of course, my class pointed out we were before the plaid.
Before the plaid, pre-plaid.
So the Harpeth Hall values of excellent teaching and love of learning, and I've already addressed how important that was to me. The other is the culture of empowerment for women, and then the encouragement to take risks, to be bold, and then the third one is the value of solid friendship, sometimes lifelong. And so those were the three, and I can talk a little bit about those. My two sisters and my daughter followed me to Harpeth Hall, and we were surrounded by strong women, leaders, teachers, role models, mentors, and peers. My classmates are here today, for example. This culture of environment encourage us in our pursuits in education and in careers. For example, my sister Lissa is a pioneer in this pioneer woman leader in the STEM field. She's chair of the biostatistics department at UNC, the current president of the American Statistical Association, and recently completed a term at the FDA overseeing all the biostatistical research for drug approval. So I can hardly tell what she does, but she was encouraged here by science teachers and others. Go quickly through undergraduate, get your master's, get into this field, and she also credits Harpeth Hall for teaching her to write, because on all the projects, the other math people, they make her do the reports, but she does it. Then my sister Cindy is a criminal defense attorney, specializing in Fourth Amendment and doing federal appeals work. And my daughter Emily just finished her residency in pediatric endocrinology and is in California, and she's a pediatric endocrinologist and is assistant professor at one of the UC medical schools with that appointment with her in her practice now. And and then for myself, I credit this culture of empowerment for enabling me to go and change, my whole direction at, a later point in life. And Harpeth Hall providing me not only with the skills for a life change, but also the sense of confidence to push myself and during that time. Then I think the importance of solid friendships cannot be overstated. That's been very important to me as a student. I developed lifelong friends. Some are here today that I'm just very grateful for Harpeth Hall. As a teacher, I had the support of my colleagues, Miss Malone is there, Miss Teef, and Lonnie, and Miss Carver, and I just see several of my colleagues, and Miss Hill, and so forth. And of course, as a teacher, the relationships with students, and several of them are here. I just can't express how grateful I am for that opportunity. As a parent, I am very grateful for the support that my daughter received when she was at Harpeth Hall. She had a chronic illness and got a lot of extra support from Miss Malone and Miss Hill and others. And she got a lot of encouragement to pursue her dream in education and this whole medical thing. I think she got a little bit too much support to follow her voice from some of her teachers. When I wanted her to stay fine at Vanderbilt Medical School and she goes out to San Francisco, my friends crossed me here. She's happy, and I have, as a result, 2 grandchildren in California. But I think it's also, leaving Harpeth Hall, it was very important for me to figure out new relations across a broad spectrum. And I was able to develop friendships and relationships, and which are very important to me today, at Vanderbilt and in other higher ed institutions, and nonprofit grant partners, and government agencies. And I feel like this value of relationships and friendships that's important at Harpeth Hall, as well as that culture of empowerment for women, the encouragement to be bold, and then of course the love of learning and excellent teaching. Those were all important to prepare me for beyond the plan.
Beyond the pre-plan. I didn't want to cut you off this time. I'm sorry.
I wish she'd written my notes.
I
I'm wearing contacts, so I can't read them unless so I just have these colorful things here.
know. Okay. Okay. Just making sure this time. Okay. Allison, what about you? How did Harpeth Hall help to prepare you for life after the plaid? And what could Harpeth Hall have done more?
Well, I tell you, I think I'm going to reverse the question on you because I am going to say I probably could have done more with what I had from Harpeth Hall. At the time, I graduated and went through college, and even after that, I don't think I knew exactly what Harpeth Hall had given me. I screamed and yelled sometimes about the level of academics that we had here and the tests, and as I said earlier, I wanted to play ball, I wanted to party. Okay, I see some of my classmates, they know me. I wanted to play. I wasn't as serious a student as I probably should have been. And it probably wasn't until a little ways into my career that I began to receive compliments on my writing skills. Exactly what you're saying, on my communication skills, my ability to work a room. Well, I didn't think I knew how to work a room, but as that started to develop and as I started to grow as an executive, I started to realize more and more what Harpeth Hall had given me. And part of my angel story was to give back. And in the last 10 to 15 years, I have reconnected with a lot of my classmates, some of whom are also here. I see them, yay, 79, who are dear and lifelong friends to me. As I said, Mom and Dad said, go to Europe with Miss Patty. I was like, with Miss Patty? What, are we going to go to Europe with Miss Patty? But we did, and we had a blast. So I wasn't afraid to go into other cultures, to learn about other things that weren't just Nashville, Tennessee. And I tell you, the empowerment and being in a world that is rapidly changing and being involved in different cultures has been a blessing, and I think Harpeth Hall prepared me for the ability to do that and to not be afraid to be in a minority if you happen to be in a minority, not to be afraid, and I'm going to name drop here for a second, to be backstage with John Williams and Steven Spielberg at the Hollywood Bowl at the Star Wars premiere. I never thought I could do those things, but as I look back and as I've spent more and more time with Ann and with Jess and with my classmates, I really do think that the time with Harpeth Hall, not just as a student, but the time I've spent on the National Advisory Council, and those of you in the room who are on that know how amazing it is what they do here now. I am just, every time I walk on campus, I'm just, well, was that me really there? And the kids are amazing, and what y'all are doing, the educators, the people that are here doing that and encouraging those young women, just please keep doing it, because I'll tell you, we take interim students at my company in New York and in Nashville. A lot of my friends do the same, and those kids are just tremendous, and they are going to make a difference in this world.
Thank you, Allison Carrington. What about you? How did Harpeth Hall help to prepare you for life after the plaid skirt, and what more could Harpeth Hall have done, if anything more?
Well, I have a few thoughts on that, which circles me back to the shed. I mentioned that shed. I know you're thinking, why did we have to go down the road about the shed? I built the shed. That's the part I forgot to say. I built it with my own hands, in my construction class. So it just moved to my house this weekend, and I was thrilled about it, and just really represented something I never in my life would have thought I could have done, with power tools and ladders and circular saws. And I have photographs of myself standing on a ladder cutting rafters on it, and I was like, who is that person? That is me. So Harpeth Hall gave me an enormous amount of confidence to do whatever. And in that case, I was working with some pretty rugged guys, like they did not have much respect for me on day one. And if I hadn't had the gumption to stick up to them over and over and over for week after week after week, I wouldn't have broken through, and they realized, wow, she's really on our side. She's pretty smart. She's mildly athletic, and she'll help us get this job. And so I was in a 1.5-year program, and the first few weeks were really rough with these guys because they had never seen anything like. They didn't know where I was coming from. First of all, I was so old, and they called me they just called me every day. They'd be like, "You're so," instead of like jokes about how fat you are, like they're like, "You're so old that when you walk, dust comes off the ground." Like all day long they would do this. I mean, and finally I would kind of chime in, and I could tell some really good old jokes too, And but Harpeth Hall gave me the confidence to deal with all of that, and to never once. I thought I didn't understand where they were coming from. Like I didn't understand why they didn't think I could do all this stuff because I was a woman. I'm like, what do you? I just was not accustomed to anybody second guessing me in any way in that for being a girl. I asked him this morning. I was asking my husband about the questions that y'all sent us, which were wonderful questions, and I've really thought so much about them this week. And so my question to him was, how do you think Harpeth Hall, what do you think this did? How did an all-girls school, how did Harpeth Hall in particular prepare me? And his answer was astonishing. First of all, he quoted. Have y'all seen the movie The Holiday with Cameron Diaz, which is like one of my favorite movies? It's on 4 times a week. I watch it 3 of these times every week. And he quoted a line from that movie, and he said, when Kate Winslet is dining with the older film writer, and he says to her, you are a leading lady, but you've always seen yourself as the friend. And he said, it kind of makes me teary, actually. He said, I think Harpeth Hall maybe taught you were your own leading lady. And then I thought, wow, I trained a man to quote The Holiday. That Harpeth Hall could have done for me is taught me anything about boys, because I have 3 boys and a husband. I don't know anything about anything. I can always use a little training there.
Thank you, Carrington. Hilarious. Elizabeth Ann, what about you? How did Harpeth Hall prepare you for life after you ditched that plaid skirt?
Well, I do have to say I have worn the plaid skirt for Halloween. So just to pile on some of what Allison and Carrington have already mentioned, I actually came to Harpeth Hall in 8th grade from USN, so sort of an odd time, but also co-ed environment, and particularly as I think about my pursuits in science and then now in business, being one of the only female representatives oftentimes in the room, I never thought twice about that. I just really didn't. I came to Harpeth Hall. I didn't have to focus on anything else in the halls, right? It's academic pursuits. How do I concentrate on school? On academics, and so when I went on to college, went on to graduate school, and then now in the business setting, the fact that I'm a woman doesn't really cross my mind. I'm not passive. Anybody who knows me knows I'm not passive. And I really credit Harpeth Hall for that. I don't think I would have been as prepared for the fields that I've been in if I had not had that single-sex education and female empowerment that Harpeth Hall offered. And then also on the writing, I think Harpeth Hall absolutely prepared me for writing in the liberal arts setting, and then that prepared me as I pursued scientific endeavors, and how I can really communicate ideas, complex concepts, simplify them. All of that goes back to that foundation that was laid here at Harpeth Hall, so I'm forever grateful for that. I think one thing where I think I could have been prepared better, and I think this is something that's not just Harpeth Hall, it's education in America right now, is really the idea of failure. Again, thinking about the path to success, if you want to get into a good college, you have to get good grades in high school. To get good grades in high school, what are you doing in middle school? And my best lessons in life have been the failures that I've had, particularly in grad school. Just really wretched, soul-searching times where I didn't know what I was going to do. I failed my qualifying exam, felt like a huge failure. Grad school kind of teaches you to fail, right? Not all your scientific pursuits, experiments are going to work out. It's failure day after day after day. And I'm glad that I learned that in grad school. I really wish that I had had the opportunity to fail more early on and learn that path of resiliency. Because I came apart at times during grad school, and I think that had I had that practice of failure and grit, I would have sailed through it more.
Thank you, Elizabeth Ann. Phoebe, how did Harpeth Hall prepare you for life beyond the Plaid, and what ways could Harpeth Hall have helped you more?
Yeah, so I think that when I think about something specific and tangible in a way that Harpeth Hall prepared me beyond the Plaid, I think about Winterim. So in my junior year of my Winterim, I did an internship at Catholic Charities in Nashville, working on resettling refugees. So literally driving and picking up Burundian refugees from the airport and bringing them to their first apartment, helping tutor high schoolers who barely spoke English and how to understand To Kill a Mockingbird. And it was an incredible experience because it was the first time that I saw, okay, this can be a real career. This is an actual job. It's not just a volunteer gig after school. And then in senior year, I got to go to Fiji, which was incredible. And we were able to see for the first time with my own eyes kind of the disparity in human experience. And see kind of the differences in the way that people lived and the opportunities that they got, the healthcare available to them. And you can read about these things and you can understand them in an academic way, but getting the opportunity to actually travel to a developing country was really eye-opening, even though most of our days revolved around sea kayaking, which was very pleasant. There was still, I think, a degree of, okay, wow, this is a totally different lived human experience, and I would love to get involved in a way of trying to even the playing field a little bit. So I think that Harpeth Hall really sparked what has turned into my career through my Winterim experience. And you know, you're playing a little bit of eeny, meeny, miny, mo when you're picking what you're going to do at 16, 17, and it's kind of funny how directly that's correlated to what I've actually ended up doing. And in terms of how Harpeth Hall could have helped me more or done more, one thing that I've thought about a little bit is, would it be possible for Harpeth Hall to provide a little bit more kind of technical and practical education in things like coding, data analysis? I think a lot of us who enter the business world, you know, day one are sort of expected to pump out an Excel model and don't know how to do that. And I don't think that's just Harpeth Hall. I think that's very common across a lot of high schools. And I think as the world is shifting more towards kind of technology and analytical software approach to work, that would be helpful. And my understanding is that that is becoming part of the curriculum now, but it definitely wasn't as recently as 2009.
Glad it is. I could have used that too. All right. Thank you, Phoebe. Back to Mary. Well, what's the best piece of advice you've ever received, and what would you like to pass on to others?
So I wanted to say, the first thing I wanted to say is to stay open and be nimble, that life never turns out the way you envision it. And when there are bumps along the road, if you're open and can be nimble, just amazing things can happen. I think that's important. And the other thing, and I'm not going to read this, but I just, this is just something I've always liked, and it's Merlin's advice to Arthur in White's Once and Future King, when he says the best things for being sad is to learn something. That the only thing that never fails is learning. It's a whole thing, but I just love that, to learn something. That's all I have.
Thank you, Mary. Allison, what's the best piece of advice you have received, and what would you like to pass on to others?
I think the best piece of advice, and I've received a lot of it, is to give back. It started with, as I told you the story of my angel, then to pay it forward. I didn't really know what that meant at the time, but I think most of us in this room have been very blessed in our lives. And it doesn't take a lot of money, it doesn't take a lot of time. A little bit of giving back can go a very, very long way to making your heart full, as well as those people. And I listen to what you're doing, Phoebe, and you know, the different cultures and what all these wonderful women are doing. And I think that that's a thread that runs through all of us in a little way, is to give back, whether it's to your community, another community, someone not so fortunate as we are. And I love the open and nimble. I can't wait to hear what y'all are going to say. But also, save for retirement.
And sunscreen.
And sunscreen.
Thank you, Allison. Very good advice here. Carrington, what about you? What's the best advice that you've received? What would you like to pass on to others?
Well, I loved this question. I love this question too, and I really have just been brooding over all these. And you know, there's a poem, and it's everybody probably knows it. It's by Rudyard Kipling. It's called "If," and it says, "If you can walk with kings nor lose the common touch." Or I can't quote the whole thing, but I have found that throughout different moments of my life, different verses of that poem resonate with me the most. And so there have been moments where and this is to your point about grit and resiliency, that there's a line in the poem that I think about anytime I'm sort of faced with like some adversity and failure and whatnot, is if you can make a pile of all your winnings and risk it on one turn of pitch and toss and lose, then start again at your beginnings and never breathe a word about your loss. And I always think, well, that's pretty profound. I mean, sometimes you really put a lot of effort into something and you just fail, and that's awful and embarrassing, but it's the ability to muddle through that gets you on to the next thing. And so that's one verse of the poem that I go back to. But I think my favorite verse of the poem is, if you can fill the unforgiving minute with 60 seconds worth of distance run, then the world and all that's in it will be yours. And what's more, you'll be a man, my son, which sort of pisses me off, because it could have been could have been a great poem otherwise. But I think that staying busy is not just for busy's sake, but just knowing that everything you do leads you to some other thing. And it may not be the thing you're doing today, but it's the thing that leads you to the next thing. Filling the minute with his 60 seconds for me.
Thank you, Carrington. Elizabeth Ann, the best advice that you've received, what would you pass on?
So I think different phases in life, different times, different quotes or different pieces of advice people have given me has resonated more. I think right now, one thing that really stands out is on not staying stuck to your story. That sometimes we have this narrative of who we are, who's against us, who's with us, and sometimes that's not a really healthy narrative to stay stuck to. Breaking free of that and really having the power to write your own story. And I see this play out so often in the workplace right now. Is people that I work with, I see some people get stuck and not be able to get out of it. And I think a lot of that has to do with their framing of the world and entrenched in this sort of narrative, and just trying to have a little bit of deviation from that and look at the world in a new way, and not be so stuck in what we're telling ourselves.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Phoebe, the best advice that you've received, and what would you pass along?
Well, I think 5 years into my career, I'm probably not in a great position to be dispensing out advice. But I think in terms of the best advice I've received, I'm in a field that isn't linear in any way. There's no kind of rule book on how do you get to the next stage, and everyone's stories of how they landed at the company where I work is honestly quite random. And so I asked my boss when I first started at my job, for advice on navigating the field of international development and how I can progress. And she gave me the advice of it's going to be really hard to look too far forward because the opportunities are a bit more random. It's not like you're working towards the end of your residency and then your fellowship like you're a doctor. So she suggested instead that at the time I was doing the marketing strategy for getting more farmers into our program. And she said, look, I think the best thing that you can do is to learn as much as you possibly can about marketing to bottom of the pyramid clients in rural Africa and crush this project, and absolutely do it to the best of your ability, and really try and be as present and mindful as you can about whatever's on your plate right now, which isn't to say not to push for a promotion or take advantage of a new opportunity, but really to say that, what you're ultimately going to be able to use as leverage to move forward in your career is what you've done and kind of the credibility that you've built by doing what you have now well. So I've tried to be kind of present and mindful and not try to look too far ahead, and I think that's been really helpful in my career.
Thank you. I love all of the advice. This is our last question, and I think it might be my favorite. Mary, to whom or what would you like to write a thank you note?
Okay. Well, I said when I was thinking about this, I was thinking about my parents for sending my sisters and me to Harpeth Hall, and for Ms. McMurray for hiring me to teach there many years ago. Because from both of those decisions, I have lifelong friends. I had wonderful colleagues, and I got to know these wonderful, wonderful students. I also, and this is a little bit lighter note, but on the other hand, it's not, would like to thank fifth period lunch. Back in the 60s, we had early lunch, and it was a very small group, and I was thrown together with Gail Trickett and Marcie Schaefer, and we kind of bonded there, and they're here today, and they've been friends, and all of my friends in the class of 69. Thank you.
Thank you. Most of them are right here.
Does anybody stay up late? Thank you, notes. Nobody stays up late. Nobody got that, G. You've seen me. Thank you notes. God, there's so many. I've mentioned so many people in my life that have made a difference, but I thought so much about this question, and I am going to write a thank you note to my sister one of these days. I say it to her all the time. She's an amazing woman, also a Harpeth Hall graduate, 1982. Her name is Ellen Simpson. She lives here in Nashville with her husband and 3 boys, and has done an amazing, amazing job. We took very different paths in life, and she is one of the most incredible people I know. So that's my thinking. And Mom, you too, sorry.
Carrington, your thank you note?
Well, I think can I give two answers? One is my parents, because now that I'm a parent, I realize that there's no way to ever say thank you enough. You're gonna get all weepy about that. But then I thought of another one that I would have had this recurring thought over the years. I bumped into Adelaide yesterday at one of the reunions, and she reminded me, just seeing her immediately just brings back this flood of memories of Country Day Camp. And I know a lot of y'all went to Country Day Camp, and that camp to me was sort of like before the Harpeth Hall. You were a little girl and you went out into the woods and the country, and Gail Smith ran this Country Day Camp, and all the counselors were Harpeth Hall girls for the most part, and they were beautiful and kind and so adventurous and funny, and they taught us to sail boats and row boats and canoe boats and ride horses and shoot archery and dance. Oh my God. And all these build sheds, and I think it was the first. I would never have done any of those things ever again. And we talked about this yesterday, didn't we? And I never would have done those things ever again, or felt comfortable in even facing some of those things if I hadn't learned when I was in 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade that these adventures exist. Girls do these things, and you can do anything you want to do. And so I thought of Gail Smith and Adelaide and Pat Moran was, and Georgie Ann Moran was my counselor too, and oh my gosh, Ann Shoulders, and they were all Harpeth Hall girls, and it was just, it was one of the, it was just multi-generational. We were in 3rd grade, and they could have been high school seniors, and it was just this nice intermingling that I thought of it a million times. I can sing the songs, and so I think Gail Smith gets my note.
Thank you, Carrington. Elizabeth Ann, your thank you note?
So I am going to go back to my qualifying exam and the sort of ultimate failure there, and thank the members of that committee for failing me. And I mean, I really mean this honestly. That was really a game changer for me, really formative, and getting a little choked up about it. You know, it put me at such a low period, but I also realized that I had the strength to get out of it. And it really taught me to pursue, to take no prisoners, and I would not be where I am today if I had not had that experience. There's no way to get a startup off the ground. I mean, you're fundraising and you get no after no after no. You go to customers and it's no after no after no. And so just learning from that experience and carrying that through every day with what I do has been, again, I would not be here without that.
Thank you. Phoebe, your thank you note, where is it going?
Yeah, so I sort of went with the what, with the who or the what, and I think it's something that's threaded through a lot of this discussion, but certainly what came to mind for me was the concept of single-gender education. I think I came to Harpeth Hall in 5th grade, and I was 9 years old when it started, and so from when I was literally a small child until I got to college, I only saw women taking on leadership positions, and it never really occurred to me that that wasn't normal. And I think that that's threaded through my life, both personally and at work, where there is no kind of voice on my shoulder telling me that I can't. That's never been part of my mindset. And I'm so grateful for that, because spending time with a lot of my female colleagues and friends who don't come from that background, who see maybe certain things as something that men are better at. I was not taught that men are necessarily better at anything. So I'm grateful for that. And I think that it's a real equalizer in my daily life and comes with a lot of peace.
Yeah. never underestimate the power of a good thank you note there. And another round of applause for our panelists. Thank you so much. Before I turn it back over to Mrs. Hill, I just want to say one thing that all of these ladies have, and I think my classmates and all of us who have graduated from Harpeth Hall, work ethic. That is something that you all clearly have, and something that was kind of ingrained in us here, and I think that allows us to succeed after we pack up the plaid skirt or pre-plaid and go on. So for that, I'm truly thankful, and thank you all for being here today. I'm going to turn it over.
I know one thank you note on my list, and that is to Scotty Coombs for putting this incredible panel together. So nice, so wonderful. And Wyatt, how smooth is she? She is so good at what she does. Thank you so much for your wonderful job moderating. There's somebody in the room I have to say welcome to, and that is Ann Teef, who's in the back of the room. Back there when I first started, or I would have said it earlier. But thank you all for being here today. This was so wonderful. There are not many panels that make me laugh and cry, so that was really wonderful. But thank you, and please join us right outside for a glass of wine. Thank you, or some things to eat too.
I mean, now that I'm putting it